On Wednesday in Punjab, a serious breach of security took place when Prime Minister was trying to reach Hosseiniwala. Now, Hosseiniwala is actually on the border, and Prime Minister was exposed on an overbridge for 20 minutes. On this issue, I'm joined by Yashovardhan Azad, who retired as Information Commissioner, but before that, he had a long tenure in the Indian Police Service and served in most crucial positions in the Intelligence Bureau, Cabinet Secretariat, and even looked after the VVIP security of the most important people in this country. Sir, thank you so much for giving us time on News 9. And let me begin this interview by asking you, as a person who spent decades in the security establishment of this country, what was the lapse?
I think the most serious lapse was, as you have pointed out, is exposing the Prime Minister alone with his cavalcade on an overbridge just right on the border with Pakistan for about 15 to 20 minutes with just SPG as its last frontier of protection. I think that was a grave lapse because as per the security rules, you cannot stop the cavalcade of a prime minister going anywhere. That is one of the biggest, parameters as laid out, that prime minister's security should never be compromised by stopping it during his journey in a situation like this.
Can you explain it, for the benefit of a common viewer? What is Prime Minister's security? What is SPG? How are they different from other forces? And how is the Prime Minister's security architecture different?
In layman terms, I would say that the Prime Minister of India faces the highest level of threat. And this threat comes not only from internally, from the separatist elements or the homegrown terrorists or whether it's the Nakshals, whether it's the other groups. It also comes from abroad, across the border, the kind of friendly country we have on both sides, on the east and west. And therefore, in response to this kind of a threat, which is very, very grave, the highest security is accorded to the Prime Minister. For a layman, I would say that this means protection by a special protection group. Special protection group is highly trained, highly skilled in VIP protection, and they are the best from the security forces which are inducted in Prime Minister's security detail. They have the best grade weapons, the highest grade weapons. He has a special car like the US President's car. His entire cavalcade comprises of some of the best, close proximate security specialists. And the third thing is that when he goes anywhere in the state, there is a complete coordination between the intelligence agencies, the state security forces, the SPG, and in fact, all the civil authorities are obliged to help in the security arrangements so that everyone is on board, and there is a particular order which has to be followed for PM security, which is followed scrupulously by each and every element of the security paraphernalia.
So what was the lapse? If we have to say that, well, this is the place where the security agencies erred. So what was that?
I'm glad you asked this question because there are allegations flying all over, and there has to be a proper professional assessment because people in the country would like to know what exactly has happened to PM security. I think the gravest lapse, as you already pointed out, is that exposure, number one, for 15 to 20 minutes. How did this exposure take place is simple to recount, because when Prime Minister landed at Bhatinda and he had to travel by road, obviously he had to travel by road because the weather conditions were very bad and the chopper could not fly. This distance of 111 kilometers from Bhatinda to Firozpur is about 111 kilometers. So mind you, it's an electioneering state, campaigns are going on, and when Prime Minister travels by road, almost everyone gets to know. There is a thing called mobile. So to say that the Kisan protesters, the information was leaked, that's not true. Kisan protesters knew that he will come by road. Therefore, they selected a spot and they just landed up there. Now, the paraphernalia, the state paraphernalia, which was moving ahead of the cavalcade, reached there first. and they saw there was a block. I don't know whether they had information from before by their intelligence agencies. They should have been told by the state intelligence agency that there is a blockade ahead, so that the prime minister would have been stopped well ahead. But anyway, near the overbridge, they kept the prime minister at the back. And the mistake, as you're asking, actually occurred when the policemen, the police leadership started negotiating with the protesters to move, sort of, discussing with them. And this took time. They should have cleared even if force was required, they should have cleared that, because the prime minister's convoy cannot stop even for a second, because there is a grave security threat. It has to keep moving. And that is where the threat came, and that is where the lapse is. It's a gaping hole, I would say.
Should Prime Minister be taking such long routes, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers?
Normally, no. You're absolutely right. We recommend, is always recommended, and Prime Minister has been taking helicopters. In fact, also to obviate the difficulty of the people in traffic and things like that, the Prime Ministers and VVIPs do take helicopter hops. But in this case, it was inevitable because the weather was bad, and therefore he had to go by road, and there was no option. So that is why I think this road journey became inevitable.
The question is also that this route was changed last minute. How can routes be changed last minute? What's the procedure?
See, there is a thing called contingency planning. Obviously, when you're traveling and you carry a grave amount of threat, you keep doing many changes. You go by air, you go by route. I'll give you a very simple example, Karthikeya. I was in Pakistan with our Indian team, and we were supposed to go to Peshawar for a meeting, for the match. And Javed Menda told me that we are going by bus. Why don't you come at night with the Pakistan team? So I had booked by air, and I said, yes, we announced that we are going at night, but we again changed, and then we went by air. So this is something which is, normally done. And in this particular case, I would say, even if it was suppose a contingency plan, it doesn't matter. If it was a contingency plan, the DGP had given the clearance, the road was clear, the state police was going ahead in front. So I would say in that respect, it was fine because there was no other option. The only thing is when you stop a cavalcade and start discussing with people, that is not done. You have to clear it. And that is where the problem lay.
Do you remember the last time SPG fired, apart from the attack on the parliament, was when Chandrasekhar was traveling by train and they had to fire because too many
was some
people.
Incident on a train. 2 people were killed. That's true.
So do you think that, this episode came very close, if, crowd would have started assembling?
You're absolutely right. If you have exactly brought up the security issue in this. If the kafila is delayed, and if people start, milling around and obviously make an attempt to go towards the prime minister. Now, there are various versions that, to kisan the, dost the, koi bhi the. How do you differentiate in a crowd? Will any own that, all of them are safe vouched? For coming near the prime minister, you screen people. And in a place like this where people have gathered, they have blocked the road, can you take any chances? So, this is not a time for, making a political football out of it, but we should look at it very, very professionally. You can't just allow a prime minister to be on the road exposed. Simple and straight. And for that, if you have to use force, then damn well use it.
And my last question to you then, is it possible that, the prime minister is exposed for 20 minutes, the call goes from prime minister's office and no one picks up in Punjab? Because if politicians don't pick up, then you have secretaries, home secretary, DGP, IB director in charge. The whole paraphernalia of officers are there.
You see, what happens is that in such cases, you're heavily dependent on the state. So, for a road clearance, for any kind of contingency, any kind of further, the entire security apparatus of the state should be available with you. In fact, the state should have been more proactive. that they should have rushed in people to just remove the Kisan protesters. What else could be done? There were ways to get him back, or they would have suggested that, no, let's push him back and then try something else. So there are so many things which could have been done. But unfortunately, there couldn't be a coordination. There couldn't be a coordination because allegation from this side is that nobody was picking up the phone, whereas the other side is saying that we were trying to make arrangements. So this should be a part of that inquiry. And by the way, the Punjab state has announced an inquiry, but it has announced a retired justice and Secretary Home, Principal Secretary, but there is no VIP security specialist, which should have been a cop well versed in these, so that he would have given a proper assessment of the situation.
So you're saying that this is a lacuna in the inquiry process?
The inquiry committee should have included a professional who was well versed in VIP security. And there are people in Punjab who are very well versed in VIP security. They should have had one.
So thank you so much for making time for a news time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Karthikeya.